Well, I read the National Post. I call it the mainstream media because by many measurements it is, but it is, I think, the last bastion of independent critical commentary. And one of my favorite parts to read is called First Reading. It's sort of a summary of what's going on there, curated by Tristan Hopper. And I was just chatting with him before we turned on the cameras about his coverage of that so-called spaceport in Canso, Nova Scotia. What a scandal that is. But he had an interesting story today. The headline is, Ottawa has no idea how many temporary migrants are still here. While Canada has asked millions of migrants to leave, there's no way to track whether they're doing so. Here's an exchange in Parliament between Conservative Senator Kostas Menegakis and Lina Diab. Just absolutely priceless. Take a quick look.
Yeah, it's a little hard to believe that on March 23rd, the Auditor General found 153,000 people, and then boom, magically within a month or so, the problem seems to have been resolved on your end. Still, there are 21,420 people that you're looking into, and there's concern about people being in our communities. Astoundingly, Mr. Gallivan. Well, I still have another question
okay.
now. So Mr. Gallivan astoundingly testified that there was no entry or exit system in place in your department. So the question is why? The government has been in power for 11 years now. This is the 11th year. Canadians want to know, we want to know, why there would be no entry or exit system in place.
Well, that's a good question. I wondered the same thing but that's how Canada has been throughout its history. This is nothing new. Canada's never ever had that, ever since Canada was created. So the issue now, and I agree with you, we should have it, and we are working towards it. That is the good news. So I agree with you.
I agree with you. We should have it, and we are working towards it. That is the good news. Hey guys, I got some really good news on foreign migrants who have to leave. Here's the good news. Are you ready? We've been in power for 11 years, but the good news is we're working towards it. All right? All right. Well, there you have it, the state of Canadian politics and immigration. Joining us now to talk about it is Tristan Hopper, the author of First Reading. Tristan, am I missing something? Is that really good news that they're working towards it? I mean, I suppose it is.
I guess acknowledging that, something is a problem, but it's sort of like, if your crappy boyfriend says he's working on his problems, that doesn't mean he's actually going to fix those problems. He's working on them.
Well, there's a saying that you hear sometimes, that's not a bug, that's a feature, which means this problem that you're talking about, it's actually not considered a problem. It's the whole point of things. And I would put it to you that our excessively, incredibly libertine immigration system, that's not an accident. That's on purpose. So it's working as planned. I mean, there's a saying in computer science that the purpose of a system is what it does. So if you want to know what is the purpose of our immigration system, it brings in maximum people with minimum scrutiny. That is what it does. That is its purpose. And anything that Lina Diab says, that's actually the anomaly. I mean, I think that they want to bring in absolute masses of people for economic reasons. This is that century club idea of 100 million people. If you're the banks, you love it. If you're a cell phone company, you love it. If you're a landlord, you love it. If you're an employer, you love driving down wages. There are a lot of people who love maximum population migration. I think that's the purpose of it.
I mean, there's definitely a pattern I've seen certain areas of the government in which you'll have sort of a conspicuous lack of data on something that the government wants to do. I mean, the classic example I can think of is harm reduction. So when you're opening sort of safe injection sites, the usual scientific rigor you would apply to such experiments, if you were legitimately trying to see if they were having a net good, is you would do long-term 5-10 year studies of, the overall health of a community. Instead, you had very limited, within 6 months, here's what happens to, crime within the several blocks around the safe injection site. So it's so limited, it's so patchy. It's almost you're intentionally trying to avoid the bigger picture. In this case, I mean, there's lots of areas in which the government actually has been transparent about figures on migration that, if your theory was to hold, they wouldn't want those figures coming out. There was actually pretty good numbers on when we had just thousands of illegal border crossers starting in 2017 crossing over the border. We actually had, per up to the person, pretty regular updates on how many of those were coming in. So on this particular metric, I would be more inclined to say it's one of those many things within the Canadian system, because Lena Diab was saying, well, there's never been a way to track who is actually leaving. All the way back to 1867, there hasn't been a system like this. So I think that just speaks to there's a lot of things in the Canadian system that we didn't need to have this kind of rigor simply because it hadn't been stress tested to this point. There's never been a prior example in Canadian history of you just bring in 1 to 2 million temporary migrants within the space of a few months, and you expect them all to just voluntarily leave because you asked them politely. And you didn't screen them when they came in, so you have no idea who any of these people are. So you have a system that worked for the first 150 years, but then when you have, hey, you 1.5 million people we didn't screen, and some of you came in here under false pretenses, can you please leave? And we'll just assume you did. That worked under the prior system, but now, we're discovering it may be lacking.
Over the last 11 years, they've pretty much phased out any meetings, any appointments with a human being to immigrate to Canada. It's all just done online. I mean,
even your citizenship ceremony is remote if you're even appearing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just the icing on the cake. But a foreign national does not have to actually meet with a Canadian in an embassy or a consulate. It's just like going on a Facebook page or something. And I think that all of these things taken together, they all point one way: reduce barriers to entry. But if you're not even having a person look at a would-be migrant when they come in, of course they're not looking to kick them out. I mean, it's sort of obvious what the point of the system is. If you were to acknowledge that there were a problem, if you were to count, if you were to say, well, we actually know how many people are here that shouldn't be, then you might actually have to do something if you acknowledge the problem. That's why you see no evil and hear no evil, because if you did, it's like the saying for a criminal accused: do not tell your lawyer you're guilty. Don't give it away. I think that they're deliberately not acknowledging a problem so they don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, the state of the immigration department right now is absolutely everything is on fire. Asylum seekers is on fire. Screening of temporary migrants is on fire. All of the things they were supposed to be doing, they've all collapsed, and they're all kind of a disaster. So even if Lena Diab was approaching this with completely good intentions, and she actually wanted to rein things in and bring it back to the sustainable immigration system we used to have, you could even sympathize with, we're gonna open this door, and that's just going to be a backdraft and fire. So maybe we'll just wait to deal with all these other fires first.
I've asked this question to the Conservative Party's immigration critic, and I was sort of surprised with the fortitude of her answer. I said, would you support mass deportations? Because it's more than 1 million people whose tenure here has expired, either students or temporary workers, or they're here in some other way. That would be a lot of planes getting filled up and flying back to countries far away. If you were going to enforce the law, it would be an enormous challenge. And we can see how big a challenge it is in the United States when you have a fully funded and aggressively supported ICE. I mean, America has barely deported 1 million people.
It's called NICE now.
Yeah, which is hilarious. So even the conservatives are very timidly saying, yeah, I guess that's the logical conclusion.
It's because it's not tremendously controversial. So Post Media, we commissioned a poll 2 years ago. So 2024, and it's been a long 2 years. So immigration sentiments among the Canadian population were not nearly as radicalized, then as they are now. And even then, we had a poll. I think it was either a huge plurality or a majority of Canadians, when asked point blank, would you favor mass deportations? They said yes. So I think that's why the Conservative Party is taking this on, because although you can look at poll numbers, you can look at outside support for the Liberal Party, you can think that you are surrounded by Canadians who have lost touch with reality and they don't see the things you do. Sometimes on these specific issues, you'll find very radical sentiments, even not radical sentiments, but on mass deportation specifically. I think the average Canadian, they're looking at day after day after day, just reporting about things that didn't used to happen. You know, an entire city in, Surrey taken over by Punjabi gangsters. Constant court cases in which someone has come from another country, immediately starts breaking the law, scamming the system, and they're kept in the country. A judge decides they cannot be deported. So I think your average Canadian, regardless of their political affiliation, sees that and determines that some sort of action needs to be taken about it. So when you see that majority of Canadians saying we need some sort of mass deportations, I don't know what that looks like, but people like the idea of a plane filled with foreign criminals who are not respecting the system not being here anymore.
And I think that's how the U.S. tried to start it. Go after the absolute worst cases that have no personal sympathy. Go after the criminals. Go after the people who committed horrific offenses.
I think the timidness is because we have this strange dynamic in Canada. I think the majority. I think we're still among the most pro-immigration countries on earth, but that's balanced with, if you are pro-immigration and you like the idea of people coming from all over the world, you're almost more pissed off than the average at abuses of the immigration system. So that's sort of the dynamic I see. My inbox personally, if it's an conspicuously African or Indian name, it's always something about how immigration's out of control. And then it's a bunch of white people calling me racist. It's a very unique immigration dynamic we have in Canada versus, say, like a European country, which is just like, get rid of all the immigrants. Ours is a bit more nuanced.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Lavant Show. I'm Ezra Lavant. Every day I give a monologue on the news of the day, interview an interesting newsmaker, and then I wrap up with your fan mail or hate mail, whichever it is. It's the only place to get this kind of commentary in Canada, a place overwhelmed by censorship and government-funded journalists. Go to rebelnewsplus.com to subscribe.